Good afternoon. My name is Janice Pope. I am one of the sales reps for Studio E and Blank Quilting for Jaftex. And I also have my own design company, Anything But Boring. My booth is right next to theirs. Stop by all our booths and speak to us. We would love you for it. Today we're going to talk about an interesting subject. So how many of you are familiar with the metric that we're going to talk about? How to lift your dollars per square foot metric. So some of you are, okay? If you have a point of sale system, this is going to be a lot easier. Is this not a quick and easy, go to QuickBooks and run a report? It takes a little bit more effort than that because you need to start by analyzing your store. You look at your square feet that you are either own or paying rent for, and then you divide up the square feet into sections that would count as a sales category. Now, it won't be perfect because, of course, you have walkways. You need to include your walkways. So, for example, if this was what I call a special exhibit, my podium here, then you would count a couple of feet all the way around it in order to accommodate someone walking up and looking at your cute display that you've created. So keep that in mind with your aisles. So if you have an aisle and you've got fabric on each side, you would split the aisle in half, and 1/2 of the square feet that is a walkway goes to one side and one goes to the other side. If you have all of your fabric in one area, that makes it a lot easier. You just count every piece of square feet with the walking spaces included. Does that make sense? Cool. So there will be areas, of course, we'll get into that a little deeper in the talk, like the restroom, where you've got to have a necessary room, right? You can't have customers without allowing them to go to the restroom. So think of ways that you can monetize that. It seems odd to think about monetizing your toilet, but it is a way for you to increase those dollars. So I did not go to a store and analyze their store. I made this up, okay? I just used it as an example for you to get an idea of how to do the math. So you take that number, your square feet. I just used 50 by 50, 2,500. So how many of you have a store that's roughly 2,500 square feet? Actually, 4 or 5 people. Excellent. So then you look at your different categories. Now, if you have a point of sale system, this is going to be a lot easier because you may have all your books in one category, or you may have all your fabric in one category, or your notions in one category. Where it gets a little complicated is when you have a special exhibit. So you have a display, and you've got the tools to make that quilt, you've got the quilt hanging, you've got say there's 8 bolts of fabric to make this quilt, that's all in that display. Say it's got something special on it like a silhouette. If you come by my booth, I'll show you a silhouette. Say it's got some kind of embroidery or something. So you've got everything in that area that goes with that sample. That's when you can really, if you can add a special code to those items, then you can tell how effective that display was. Does that make sense? So if it just depends on how you can keep track of that, but it's a concept that will make you want to do more displays if it is being successful. So let's kind of go through this. I took the fabric in my pretend store, 1,500 square feet of that 2,500 square feet I said was fabric, because a lot of us sell fabric, right? And so then you divide your 1,500 square feet into your sales and hopefully this is just a month of sales, not a year of sales. So you divide that into the month, and that gives you a $5.33 per square foot for that category. So then once you break down each category, then you have a better idea of where your money, how to spend your inventory dollars, how to be able to make sure that you've got enough of something. So when you have things stacked, then it gets a little more complicated. So for example, fat quarters, you may have a row of fat quarters in our little fake display we have here that has the bolts underneath, and then you may have a stack of fat quarters. That makes it a lot harder, but if you know what that product line is and they're all in that product line, then you can track it that way. So in my fake store, I said that you had $4,000 in special displays at $8 a square foot, and then $1,600 in notions. So notions are one of those weird things that you kind of have to go up because they're kind of flat and hang on little pegs or something. So it makes it a little harder to figure that out. But your floor space, you have to count your standing space and your space to get to that display. So then that makes the dollar add up more, because the actual square footage of your notions might be only 1.5 feet because it's hanging on the wall. So if you count your floor space, then it makes a little bit more sense. So I mentioned your toilet, but what about your classroom? Do you somehow try and monetize the classroom for something other than just teaching a class? If you put things in the classroom, maybe you have samples that you still have some of the fabric, maybe that would be a place to put those samples. As quilters, we love to have, the visual in front of us. So maybe putting old samples hanging up in the classroom, or samples that you have the pattern for, but you may not necessarily have the fabric, but using every single square foot of that space will help you raise those dollars. So I looked at what big box stores do, because obviously they're successful and they sell their dollars are probably higher than our quilt stores. I looked at all of those and I listed some of those, so we're just going to run through those, and then if you have any other ideas or suggestions or things that you're doing that I might not have mentioned, I would love to hear those. Eye level. So I don't know if you know this, but in the grocery store, they put the things that don't sell well at eye level. Now when you're in a grocery store, you're usually walking. I'm a little tall, so my shelf height might be a little higher than some, but the things that are in this level are the things, you go to the grocery store and it's like, gosh, where is that so-and-so? I can't find it. Well, they may have put the common things, the things we're all looking for, on the bottom shelf, because you're going to hunt it and you're going to find it if it's your favorite thing. So it's a different concept to do it this way, but grocery stores in particular use this technique. So they'll put the thing that is very common and sells a lot on the high shelf or the low shelf. And the things that are uncommon or new or special, they'll put at eye level to see if they can generate sales for those items. So if somebody's looking for green beans and they don't care what kind it is, then a particular, maybe the most expensive green beans are right at the eye level because they want you to spend the extra 10 cents per can. So how does that translate to us? Well, it could mean that the fabric that is the most attractive might go on the bottom shelf because somebody's going to find it and buy it. Whereas the other fabric, the fabric that is not as common or perhaps not as attractive, might go in the middle shelves. Does that sound like a crazy thing to do? It could be. When you enter a store, the space immediately to the right, I've mentioned this in other Schoolhouse talks, that space just to your right as you walk in a store is supposed to be your $1 million space. That space is supposed to generate the #1 sales in the store. Why is that? Because most of us are right-handed, and when we walk in, we generally turn to the right and start sweeping our eyes. If you're left-handed, maybe you turn to the left. So that's not the place to put your thread, because people are going to buy thread anyway. Now you might want your thread close to the checkout so that you can watch and monitor and make sure people are not stealing your thread, but that may not be where you want your best display. I would consider putting my very best displays up near the front and in that spot, something that's going to grab their attention and they're going to walk over to it and examine it. A lot of my stores, I've noticed, try and have their new fabric, what just came in that spot, to let people know, oh yeah, they've got something new and something new to look at. The other thing is to have vignettes of coordinated samples and all the theme fabrics. So that's what I was kind of thinking about right here when I was describing your special space, is to have themed things go with it. Perhaps the fabric has old sewing machines on it, then you might add an old sewing machine to your display. If it's got cats, you might have a stuffed cat. If it's, you got the idea. If it's a fall theme, you could have a real pumpkin nearby. So those kind of things to kind of make people, draw them in and make them be interested in what you're looking at. Nostalgia is another item. We don't often think about, we just think, oh, I'm going to buy this fabric, it's going to come in, everybody's going to love it, and it's going to fly out the door. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. But nostalgia is something that will make people want to buy it. Do any of you remember when the Dick and Jane books, now some of you are younger, I know how old you are, you're really young. But some of us who are over 60, do you remember the books you read in school? They were Dick and Jane, and then the fabric came out about 10 years ago. Didn't you want to buy it? I mean, oh my gosh, I gotta have some of this fabric, because it reminded us of being in second grade and reading about Dick and Jane and Tom and Harry and Spot the dog, right? Fluff the cat, Spot the dog, there you go. So what will generate that feeling of nostalgia? Well, an old sewing machine is one of those things. Now, I know this is a Studio E-Talk, but Blank Quilting has a new fabric line for Christmas called Let It Snow. When I looked at that fabric, it was right after I had been working on this talk, and I thought, this is it. This is, for me, this is it. Because it has two people dragging a cut-down Christmas tree across the snow. Now, no, it did not snow at Christmas in Raleigh or Burlington, North Carolina, where I'm from, ever. However, we did go in the field and cut down our Christmas tree for a few years, and it brought back that feeling of, oh, I want this fabric. So think about nostalgia. If you can get, I'll tell you another trick. Women love miniatures. Have you ever noticed that you can take the most common thing and you shrink it and they have a fit over it? Why is that? I don't know. I'm the same way. I have a little tiny cook set. When my mom and grandmother bought a new cookware when I was probably 3 or 4 years old, it came with a tiny, I have 3 pieces with lids. A complete set. Do you know what I use them for? I put those clips, those binder clips. I have one at my sewing machine and one at my cutting table, and I keep them there. I use them. They are the cutest little things. Why do we like miniatures? I don't know, but it brings back some kind of feeling of nostalgia. So consciously plan and think about how to generate those feelings in your customers, and it will increase your sales. Color. I mentioned color before. Well, here we are at market. We all decorate our booths to try and get you to come in my booth, because we all love color. Color is what starts and what keeps our attention so much in this industry. So think about creating displays that show off that color. It's a little harder to do with the darker fabrics, but it's very easy to do with the brighter fabrics. So think about that, and I think you'll be pleased with the results because people respond to that color. Have a display that can be touched. How many of us haven't petted Minky? We can have things made up in our stores that will cause people to want to come over and touch. Anytime we can get them touching the fabric, they're more likely to buy something. Offer free treats. That's another thing you see here at market. We all have candy in our booths. Come, are you tired? Come sit down, rest your feet. Here, have a Snickers. So it's something that we can do for our customers because when they come in, they may also be tired and exhausted. I was in a store a couple of weeks ago, and I noticed it's almost like I felt energized being in there. It was the music. I had my nails done a couple of days ago, and that particular nail salon does not have a movie playing. They do not have the TV on. They have classical music playing. And I realized that's one of the reasons I enjoy going there. Now, maybe you hate classical music. That's okay. You don't have to play classical music and drive yourself crazy all day. I happen to like classical music. However, there are some very nice, soft, upbeat type of stations that you can play that would be appropriate for a shopping environment. And they have proven that people buy more when they hear happy music. Don't ask me why. I'm just telling you the research that I did, and this is what I found out. We are all creatures of whatever drives us, and that's one of the things that drives us. Another thing you can do is to track your sales by your samples. So if you have, say, an item that sells really well, keep up with how many of those patterns you sell versus how many of the patterns you sell that you don't have a sample of. And you will find yourself reordering the ones that you have the samples of. Yes, shaking heads, exactly. Do you have customers that shop with children or grandchildren? They have found, this is a study I read, they will spend 30% more if the child goes up to something, touches it, shows it to the parent or grandparent and says, I like this, will you make this for me? Or will you buy this for me? Or will you? Yeah. So I don't know if you're marketing to children, but there is a market for marketing to the child who comes in with the parent or grandparent. So a lot of stores have a play area for the children, but have you actually thought about having a lower display with the little things that you can make with our fabric, the books or the dolls or all those cutesy things. Other tactics from big box stores. Bundle your purchases. Of course, you want to not just sell a pattern, but sell the fusible fleece and the batting and the Decrabond and all the things that go with that pattern to be able to make up that pattern. Of course, you want to sell the fabric, but you also can up your sales by adding on to each one of those. And then, of course, the sales tactics of BOGO. You buy one and you get one. Buy one, get two. Buy two, get one. There's all those combinations of, they just make you want to buy more. We were shopping just a while ago over at the Houston Center, and Mary had tried on some shirts, and she says, well, I think I'm just going to get two. I said, well, you see the sign. If you get three, you get 20% off extra. She bought the three. I'm telling you guys, it works. This is real stuff. So if they can do it in merchandising for clothing, why not do it for our stores? We can do the same thing. Loyalty shopping. I bet every one of you has a loyalty program. Raise your hand if you have a loyalty program. I'm so proud of you. That is a great idea. And if you can get your customers coming back over and over and continually adding to their loyalty, it's going to keep bringing them back. So good job, guys. I just knew you had that one, and you do. Upselling. Are you going to need thread with that? Do you have the right color thread? Do you have this? Do you need this with that? Do you need batting today? Whatever it is, it's, would you like fries with that? It's the same technique. Make sure your salespeople, they don't have to be pushy. You don't want them to be pushy, but you can have them ask the question. Just keep asking the question. Is there anything else you need? Have you thought of this? Did you think of that? Oh, the psychological pricing. I didn't skip it psychologically on purpose. Psychological pricing is pricing something so that it looks less and more attractive. It's the $.99, okay? 99, 96, 95, 97, whatever you pick for your store. Never price anything at $10. needs to be $9.95, $9.96, $9.97, or $9.99. Why is that? Because we think it's less. We don't think when you see $9.99 that it's $10. In essence, it rounds up to $10. But in our minds, if I see a fabric that is $9.99, I think, oh, that's less than $10. You know, so everything in your store, my thought is, should be $99 or thereabouts. Friendly, knowledgeable sales clerks. Of course, everybody needs great salespeople. And what I find, and please don't take offense at this, I don't know most of you, I know a couple of you. Owners think their salespeople are friendlier than they are. The reason they think that is because when you're in the store, they are friendlier. And when you're not, they may be, but they may not be. The hard thing is to find out, are they as friendly as you think they are? So I highly recommend secret shoppers. You pay someone who's not a quilter, who understands business, to go and shop at your store. Give them the money. Let them shop. Let them ask questions. Of course, they can't ask too many questions if they don't know about sewing. They're going to look really stupid. But have them come away with something in their hand that you can then replace back in the store with your money. The thing is, you need to know what's happening when you're not there. You know they're wonderful when you're there, but they are not always nice when you're not there. I've seen it. I've been there. I've watched it. It breaks my heart, but it's true. And I'm not talking to anyone in here. Yes, sir?
Would you tell them, the employees, that there are secret shoppers?
No, absolutely not. Now, you could tell them that when they aren't, because that could have the psychological effect, but I would rather not tell them and get the real results and then tell them. I had a secret shopper come in, and I am so disappointed. Or hopefully you won't have to say that. I had a secret shopper come in, and you are great. That's what you want to be able to say, but you really don't know. It's hard. It's tough, and I feel your pain, but I'm telling you, every one of my customers brags about their sales force, but they are not always great, and it's human nature. I'm probably going to smile at more customers when I have Scott with me calling on people than when I don't. I don't know what else I do different. I don't know. I'll have to think about that. But the truth is, when you're there, they're going to be better, and you want them to be better even when you're not there. But good question. Seasonal wares. I was at a store last week, and I was in the very back of the store meeting with the person who's the buyer. She's not the owner, but she's the buyer. And all the Halloween fabric was behind me. I'm like, if you put this up front, and she was complaining. I was showing her Halloween. She's like, well, I've still got Halloween from this year. I'm like, and why is it back here? And she said, oh, I know. I meant to move it up there. I just didn't get time. Well, she's not the owner, and maybe it doesn't mean as much to her. If that were my store on September 15th, I would have moved all the Halloween fabric and made a display, because you want to sell it before the holiday. So anyway, sales reps see a lot. If you want to know what's going on, ask your sales rep, because we've probably seen it all, and it's the things we see sometimes are crazy, and then we see things that are fabulous. So it's not all bad, but it can always be better. Okay, so have a space for your favorites, or a designer's favorites, or a teacher's favorites. So if you have a certain teacher and they like a certain list of things, make sure to have the things that they truly love, because they have an instant selling and rapport with their students to be able to sell, okay? So I listed, if you care, my favorites. Whenever I go in a store and I find those 4 millimeter or is it 0.4 millimeter, super, 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 they're called extra, extra fine glass head pens. That's what I pen with when I'm doing, getting my seam allowances together. Every store should have those pens. They are the best. And I bought some for Vanessa for her birthday. I said, Vanessa, is this the only pens you got? This is awful. I was helping her pen something. You need a great binding ruler. Come by my booth, I'll tell you all about it. I love the Zirkle. I haven't bought one yet, but really, really, guys, are they fabulous? Who sells those? Aren't they great? What a practical thing to have. If you don't know what it is, you got to find one at market. K-I-A or A-I, I can't spell. It's K-A-I, I think. Sorry, I misspelled it. I love their scissors. If you don't sell their scissors, you need to go by their booth. It's 804. You need to see their scissors. I buy their scissors. I bet I have a dozen pair, all different sizes, little ones, big ones. They have batting scissors. They have the best scissors. And another section you could have are things for the aging quilter. So lighting is a huge issue. For every 10 years in our age, we need to double our light amount to help us see sewing. So find a great light source and put it in your store and sell. Anybody who walks in that has this color hair, you need to be talking to them about, are you having trouble seeing? Do you need extra lighting? Do you need magnification? Because these are things that are going to help people continue sewing as they get older. And it gets tough when you can't see. It's just no fun to sew anymore. Well, we are at the end of my talk.